Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're covering one of the new layer 1 blockchains that has been on my radar for a while. I think I'm going to try and cover all of the layer 1s and do deep dives on them. So we'll start off today with Sei. Let's get straight to it. Now, for those of you who are new to my deep dives, this is the series in which I basically go really in depth into a protocol. So this is going to be a long video. Sit back, relax, grab yourself a cup of tea, make some notes if you want to as well, because we're going to go really in depth. We're going to give you a complete overview of everything. And yeah, that's why it's going to be a long one. So today we're going to talk about Sei. We've got a lot to talk about here. Sei is just one of those blockchains that people have always been talking about, but I just never really got around to spending time and researching. So now's the time. I know we should have probably been doing our research deep in the bear market, but there's so much to research nowadays, and I think it was a good time to eventually get around to this. So what are we going to cover today? We've got a lot to cover. We're going to talk about Sei itself, the problem it's trying to solve, some of the technical elements to it, and then we'll go through all the other stuff around the ecosystem, token metrics, everything else to do with that, bull and bear case as well. So lots to cover, and I think we should just kind of dive straight into it. I will try and make timestamps if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Twitter, I'll probably leave it in the description. I say description in the tweet below. If you're watching on YouTube, you should have timestamps. So go and navigate to whichever part of the video interests you. So what actually is Sei? Sei is a general purpose open source layer 1 blockchain. It's actually a Cosmos layer 1 chain, and it's specialized for the exchange of digital assets. That's their main premise, the exchange of digital assets. And they say that they are actually the fastest blockchain in the industry, and that's because they have a finality of around 390 milliseconds, which is magnitudes better than kind of any other chain that we have at the moment, including Solana, Aptos, and some of these other newer layer 1s as well. They've got this twin turbo consensus, which really helps it to achieve that, and a few other things. They've got one of the only chains to conduct market-based parallelization, so we're going to talk about parallelization as well in a bit. They have native matching engine that exchange teams can leverage, and then they've got this front-running protection, so helping to combat some of that bad MEV. Now, where did the idea even come from? Well, one of the founders actually used to work at Robinhood, and during the GameStop saga, Robinhood all of a sudden decided to stop trading. No one could buy GameStop anymore. And what was really interesting that I found out was that he was on the team at Robinhood. He was one of the leading engineers, and even the team didn't know about it. The team had no idea. So what they came around after and tried to do was to build a decentralized exchange, and they wanted to build this kind of permissionless, really good Robinhood style decentralized exchange. But what they realized was, when they were trying to build this, was that the actual underlying tech with the other layer 1s stopped them from building this. And so they had the idea that they had to kind of rebuild from the entire infrastructure from the ground up and make it very much user perspective, like very, very almost entirely had to be built for the user. That's essentially what is going on with Sei. Now we're going to go into a bit more detail. Let's go to the next slide. So what is the actual problem that Sei is trying to solve? Well, the simple premise is this. Blockchain's main use is the exchange of assets. Now, and the exchange of assets is something that we do across all sectors of crypto. And the idea is that basically in every single application that we have in crypto, every application that has product market fit, every application that we use day to day, either directly or indirectly, is a trading application. And this image really kind of helps to illustrate that. The stuff that I like to use is the DeFi stuff. So, all your DEXs, PerpsDEXs and stuff like that. Obviously, that's a trading application. When you go and trade your NFTs and you go to OpenSea or you go to Tensor or Pseudo or whatever, or Blur, I should say, again, it's a trading application. You're trading NFTs. If you're playing a game like Axie Infinity or kind of Treasure or whatever, any sort of game, often these games will have marketplaces. So essentially, they are also trading platforms. And similarly, with some of these social applications as well, they have in-app tradings or in-app exchanges. And essentially, the idea is that Sei should be able to handle all of these different types of applications. Now, a common thing that people say is that Sei is just a DeFi chain. I understand the perspective that people are coming with that, but in reality, Sei is so much more than that. It's a blockchain for basically everything that we have in crypto today, and that's because blockchain's main use is the exchange of assets. They actually came up with this concept called the exchange trilemma, and they essentially found that, well, they came up with this idea that basically suggests that the current applications that we have in crypto are suffering from either not being capital efficient in the form of like Uniswap, not being scalable with things like DYDX, and not being decentralized with things like Coinbase. And the idea is to kind of try and build applications on a chain that has all three of these. How decentralized is Sei? I'll be honest, I don't think it's very decentralized at the moment. I think Sei is focusing on user experience first. But they have said that decentralization will come from these zero-knowledge light clients. So rather than having to run a full node, which is pretty difficult actually for everyday users, users can run these zero-knowledge light clients, which you can even run from your phone. So that will help to scale the decentralization aspect. For sure. Now, how is Sei so fast? We mentioned earlier that finality is 390 milliseconds. Well, they've got this twin turbo consensus mechanism. They actually realized that there was two main steps that were really stopping them from getting really fast speeds. One of them was block processing and one of them was block propagation. They tackle this with the twin turbo consensus mechanism. And there's three main things that they've basically improved on. Number one is the idea of single slot finality. So this is the idea that basically once validators agree a block is added, it cannot be reorganized. And this is currently the case with other chains like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. They have multi-slot finality. What I found really interesting was that it's actually on the Ethereum roadmap, the single slot finality idea. The second thing is parallelization, which helps Sei to process 20,000 orders per second. 20,000 TPS is pretty big actually. More than most other chains for sure, magnitudes more than other chains. And then Sei also has this like frequent batch auction process, which helps to prevent some of the bad MEV like front running. Now, not all MEV is bad, so you don't want to stop that, but especially some of the stuff like front running that is prevented, at the consensus layer, like at the chain layer, not on the application layer. So here's a little image just comparing some of the common chains. We see a lot of talk about Solana at the moment, but Sei is has a higher TPS. It's faster from a finality perspective. It has front running prevention, and of course it does have this parallelization. However, we'll talk about what Sei is doing in terms of parallelization that's going to make it really, really interesting. Now, for those of you who are really interested in learning a little bit more about the tech aspect, I really recommend to go and watch this interview with Logan. Jay is one of the founders of Sei. He actually used to work at Robinhood. Highly recommend this. It goes in quite some detail, covering a lot of the technical elements around Sei. Really enjoyed this one, so yeah, I'll leave a link in the description to that. There are a few other interviews and podcasts as well that I recommend that I will also leave in the description below. So what I was referring to this earlier, Sei and this parallelization element. Well, Sei version 2 is going to have this parallelized EVM, and this is going to be really, really interesting because Sei is going to potentially become the first parallelized EVM blockchain. And essentially, this means that any Ethereum or ETH Layer 2 application can actually deploy on Sei without devs having to redo the code or contracts or anything like that. And so users will be able to interact with Sei using EVM wallets. MetaMask, no one uses MetaMask nowadays. Everyone uses Rabi, don't they? But the point is the same. But still having that same throughput and still having that same speed that Sei offers. So yeah, I think the idea is why did they do this? Well, layer 2s are bandwidth bound by the Ethereum base layer and fundamentally can't scale. And so at the same time as well, app chains have a lot of infrastructure overhead, risk, complexity that some teams just don't want to do. And so yeah, with the EVM applications, they can all be enhanced so much more. Like 28,300 batch transactions per second of throughput with 390 milliseconds time to finality. Like that is going to be really, really, really good for some of these EVM applications. Now, when is this coming? I believe it's going to come in the first half of 2024. So it's all in testing at the moment. And one of the great things that I've seen is on Twitter, they actually showed a video where they were able to actually demonstrate Sei on EVM, and it was working. So this was really cool to see. And I think if this comes in the first half of 2024, this is going to be a big game changer for sure. Let's talk about the Sei token. So Sei is a proof of stake token, so you can actually stake it. The main function of it is to for governance, network fees, collateral tips, things like that, really. And we're going to cover some of the tokenomics below as well. So you can actually stake it and earn around 5%. 39 validators at the moment. I mean, is that decentralized? You tell me. Not quite yet, but I think they are sufficiently happy with that at the moment, and I think they're going to just focus on the user experience for now before focusing on this with light clients, zero knowledge light clients in the future. So let's talk about the token itself. You can see that it's currently trading as of today or yesterday at 23-24 cents. That gives it a market cap of just over $500 million with an FTV of $2.5 billion. 10 billion tokens in circulation, in total, I should say, with only 2.2 billion in circulation. So really quite a lot of tokens are locked at the moment. And so these tokens will come out in future. The question is, will you get dumped? Will the VCs dump on you? We'll talk about that in a moment too. I thought it'd be interesting just to compare this to kind of some of the other layer ones. We've got one of the other new generation layer ones with Sui, which is a little bit higher in terms of circulating market cap. I mean, around 10, 20, 10, around 5-10% higher, but significantly higher FDV there with almost 3 times, I should say, almost 3 times there. Phantom, quite a bit higher, 1.2 billion. Elrond, I think it's called Multiverse now, almost 2 billion. Aptos, 2.4 billion, so around 4 or 5 times higher circulating and around 4 times higher FDV as well. Casper, which has gone crazy recently. Avalanche as well. 14 billion, 24 bill FTV, Cardano 25 bill FTV, Solana 38 billion FTV, and of course Ethereum at 283 billion FTV was circulating as well. So really interesting just to compare like the potential growth that Sei has. I mean, don't get me wrong, $500 million is still quite a lot, but I mean, you got to see kind of how other chains, how other layer 1 chains are. In terms of like how the distribution is, most of it is for the ecosystem. The team is taking 20%, and the VCs have 20% too. I was looking at the vesting period, and to be honest, over the next like year and a half, it's not too bad. So I'd say like up until the end of 2024, we're probably going to be at around 3 billion tokens. So currently we've got like 2.2 billion. So not too much in terms of supply coming. I think by mid 2025, hopefully the market is in pretty good condition then. Still, I mean, we're only at like 4 billion tokens, so around double. We've got double the circulating supply over the next 2 years, really. The inflation really goes high after that. So when we go into future cycles like 2028, 2029, 2030, like inflation is sky high then. But for now, look, I think over the next year and a half, we're basically going to see the supply double. So that's just one thing to note. I mean, I guess what you could do is you could just double the market cap, just as an idea, because that's essentially what it will be if the price were to be the same in about a year and a half's time. Interesting, but yeah, just something to kind of be aware of. In terms of metrics, I think one of the things that I like to look at is is anyone actually using this chain? So I found that there's around 8,000 users of Sei in total. Daily users aren't too much, to be honest with you, under 1,000 users a day. I have got kind of conflicting data here from both of these sources, so I thought I'll include both of them. But I mean, The answer is still fairly similar. I mean, look, we haven't got that many users, regardless of which source you like to look at. I think it's going to be under 1,000 users a day, which isn't the best. But I think part of that is just because of just being in an immature ecosystem. And I thought this was also really interesting, just comparing the TVL between Sui, Aptos, and Sei. Just because Aptos has the highest FDV at like almost 10 bill, Sui at 6 bill, and Sui's TVL has like really gone up quite a lot recently. So their ecosystem's growing pretty well. Sei pretty poor actually, with only 3 million in TVL. We're going to talk about that in a little more detail now. As I mentioned, Sei is a Cosmos chain, and so I used Kepler to interact with everything. You don't have to use Kepler; you can use any of the other wallets, but that's just the one that I use. I use IBC to get funds into the Sei ecosystem, just so I could have a play around with it as well. Just thought I'd mention that. So how is the actual ecosystem going to develop? Well, Sei actually do have a $120 million ecosystem fund. Sei is a Rust blockchain. So essentially what that means is that pretty much any sort of Solana app could actually move over to Sei if they wanted to pretty quickly. I think Rust as a language is used a lot more than some of the newer languages like Move. So, potentially there is some scope for developers to kind of build some better applications on Sei. They do have this entrepreneur resident program for developers too, but 120 million ecosystem fund, that's pretty good. You'd like to see at least a 5-10x return on this in terms of TVL. So I'd like to see Sei get to $1 billion in TVL. Right now, DeFi activity is next to nothing. There's like 2 apps here, Astroport and Lavana. Astroport is this DEX. I remember using Astroport a lot during the Terra days. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist anymore. So Astroport is on Sei. It only has around 3 million in TVL there, most of it being in some of these stable coins. One thing that I found really, really annoying was the fact that we have like all of these different versions of USDC, USDC.ARB, USDC.ETH, USDC.OP. I hate stuff like this. That fragmentation really annoys me. And the first time that I actually bridged into Sei, I had to bridge back because I bridged the wrong USDC and like there was no liquidity for it. So that was really annoying. But like I said, it's very, very early days. There's not much volume, not much liquidity. That's Astroport. The other app is Lavana, which is this perpetual exchange where you can basically leverage trade. I personally don't think too many people are using this because open interest is like 5 figures. You can deposit Sei or ETH as LP to be the counterparty. Hardly any liquidity though. The good thing, though, however, is that there are lots and lots of apps coming. Though I've just written a few of them, but there are around 50 plus applications that are coming to Sei. Nitro actually isn't really an application, but is an entire EVM on Sei using Sei for data availability. So that's going to be really cool. In terms of actual applications, there's Kryptonite, which is an LST protocol. There is another LST protocol that I did hear about. Ion, which is this real-world asset protocol. Vortex, which is this DEX that's been acquired by Sushi. Sushi Swap, that's pretty cool. Apollo DAO, which I remember from the Terra days. Black Panther, Arrakis, Sushi Satori, which I think is on ZK Sync too. They've got UXD, which is this stablecoin that is pegged by funding rates, I believe. There's Stride, which is liquid staking across Cosmos, and there's some other RWA protocols. So that's going to be really cool. This is Vortex, which is the DEX coming from Sushi, order book DEX, which is really nice to see. Not live yet, but in testing, and this looks pretty good. And I hope we can see like lots of these new apps coming fairly soon. And I think that will give Sei the growth that it needs to really get there and become one of the bigger blockchains, especially when it comes to metrics like TVL. In terms of funding, Sei Labs did get $30 million in 2 rounds from some of the big investors. We all know some of these investors over here, Multicoin Capital, Jump. Really interesting to see that they're backed by some of these guys. I'd like to think that they're in it for the long run, and given the fact that their vesting isn't it's quite a long way away. So VCs, let's have a look. Private sale investors, their vesting only kind of starts from the end of 2024. So I'd like to hopefully see, some good progress for us kind of retail investors in the next 1 year, so we can kind of bypass this. I mean, Sei is going to get a lot of VC tokens that will be unlocked for these VCs like between 2025 and like 2029. That is going to be the difficult period for token price potentially, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. A lot can change in that time, but either way, it's a while away. There's no VC unlocks anytime soon. We'll talk about the team as well. So Jay was the one that I mentioned earlier who worked at Robinhood. He's got some really, really good podcasts and interviews. Jeff was actually on the Steady Labs podcast not too long ago. Previously worked at Goldman Sachs. He's a Chad because I'm a massive RuneScape fan, and I remember this game very well. So he's on the Grand Exchange buying some diamond bolts. I love that. Anyway, both really intelligent people, very very smart, and I think yeah, good to see like some really confident founders. I believe both of them were in Forbes as well, 30 under 30. So I mean that I know that doesn't mean anything, but it's always a good thing. Also, like to just see like there's lots of jobs available if you wanted to work at Sei. I think this is always a good thing to see because it shows that things are in the growth phase. They've literally got a job just for someone to be a meme lord. That's pretty cool, and it just goes to show like they're willing to put money to really grow well. Let's have a look. What have we got here? So I think let's always talk about the bull case for sure. Something that I like to do in all of these videos. I think it's pretty easy to see that Sei is currently the fastest L1 when it comes to TPS and when it comes to finality. That should make it really the perfect chain for anything trading, especially with some of the other features that they have like parallelization, single slot finality. That stuff is really, really good. Significantly lower market cap than competitors, integrated really well within the Cosmos ecosystem. I don't know why I've written Cosmos on Cosmos ecosystem. Ignore that. Parallelization with the EVM stuff coming next year is going to be the game changer for me. I think that's going to be where Sei really takes the limelight. I mean, Raise with Jump and some of these other founders, which is really good. Chad founders as well with both Jeff and Jay. They've got a big $120 million ecosystem fund that can go a long way. And really, they only really need to make 1, 2, 3 killer applications, and you'll get a whole narrative forming around Sei for sure. Lots of protocols launching, so as long as some of them do really well, that should be good. Interestingly, they are working closely with some big protocols like Circle and Elixir. I believe I mentioned it somewhere here. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe I got rid of it. Yes, here. We'll talk about this again in a second. Here we go. Elixir. So Elixir is going to try and become this kind of native integration for unlocking liquidity. That's going to be really cool. I did actually forget to mention, like, there are some NFTs here, so you can have a look at these if you wanted to. Palette is the main marketplace for now. Not so much volume, but I mean, these top two have a bit more volume. Just something to pay attention to. Anyway, going back to the bull case. So yeah, good to see like some of these connections with these other protocols as well. I mean, I think a lot of it just depends on, are these applications that are launching on Sei going to be very good? And then kind of, if they are, then how well does the EVM parallelization thing work as well? If that works well and we get lots of applications coming on to Sei, then I think it should hopefully be a success. The bear case, as I mentioned, there's really quite a limited ecosystem at the moment, a lack of applications. The question is, when are the apps going to go live? That is the question, because I'm a user of these applications. That's what I want to see. There is actually big competition because there are two other chains that are doing this parallelization concept. Monad is one of them, which I believe is coming next year sometime, and Polygon as well, who will have one of their chains with parallelization. I have written high FTV. I mean, compared to circulating, that's kind of what I mean. Although, like I mentioned, the inflation is fairly slow over the next 1 year. Afterwards, then the inflation certainly increases, especially in about 1.5 years' time. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see for that about that. Like I mentioned, low TVL, Sui and Aptos are currently outperforming it from an ecosystem perspective. But Sui has kind of a similar circulating market cap. So interesting just to think about it like that. Like, where would you allocate to? Sui, say, Sei has a significantly lower FDV, but yeah, just something to think about there. So I believe that's pretty much everything. Yeah. So that's pretty much everything. We've covered my thoughts about Sei. We've covered what I think is going on. Sei is a really interesting layer one chain, Cosmos chain with the EVM parallelization coming next year. I think for me that's going to be the game changer. But I think it's great to see a chain with pushing the boundaries of tech with the lowest finality time being 390 milliseconds, and also some of those other features that really make Sei, the chain to be on for any sort of medium of exchange of digital assets. We'll have to wait and see how the ecosystem develops. I don't personally hold any Sei at the moment, but I think it is something I'm looking into, especially with some of these newer generation layer ones. We'll have to wait to see. I will try and do some deep dives on some of the other layer ones, Monad, Aptos, Sui as well. So we'll go really, really in depth. We'll try our best with that. Hopefully fairly soon. But yeah, otherwise, let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know your thoughts about Sei. What do you think? I'm really interested to know. And otherwise, drop a comment down below. Give this a like. Give this a retweet if you're watching on Twitter. And we'll be back with plenty more content in the near future.